The planet Lunara Prime glowed under 3 suns. Crystals rose from the ground like giant spires, catching the sunlight and scattering rainbows across the landscape. At the heart of this alien world stood the palace of Queen Zira, ruler of a civilization known for wisdom and innovation. Her people, tall and graceful, moved with quiet purpose, tending to the crystal gardens and floating energy platforms. Zira herself was in her grand chamber, examining star charts that displayed distant galaxies and unknown worlds. Her eyes, sharp and violet, traced the movements of hundreds of ships traveling across the Andromeda sector. Though she ruled with care and intelligence, a small unease had settled in her heart. Reports had arrived that a human, Eli, was approaching her planet. Humans were rare in this part of space, and few aliens understood them. They were fragile, physically weaker than most species, yet they had a reputation for curiosity and unexpected courage. Zira's curiosity was piqued, but her mind wrestled with another stranger feeling. When the communication beam from Eli's ship appeared in her chamber, Zira froze. The figure standing there was human, yes, but somehow familiar. She felt a strange tug in her memory, like a half-forgotten melody. Eli stepped forward with a polite smile. "Queen Zira," he said, bowing slightly. "I am Eli. I come in peace and with an offer of friendship between our peoples." Zira's mind raced. The voice, the calm tone, even the careful way he moved. It was almost identical to someone she had not seen in decades. A long time ago, during her early years as queen, a human had saved her life. She remembered nothing of his face, only that he had been clever, brave, and somehow gentle in a way few could match. Could this be him? She blinked, steadying herself. "I welcome you, Eli. Your presence is unexpected." Her voice carried a mix of curiosity and caution. Eli tilted his head, sensing her hesitation. "I hope that is not a problem. My goal is only to help, not to intrude." Zira motioned for him to follow her to the inner chambers of the palace. She needed to speak to him in private, to understand why her heart reacted so strongly to this simple human. As they walked, she studied him closely. His hair was brown, flecked with gray, and his face bore the subtle lines of age and experience. Yet the same warmth she remembered from long ago lingered in his eyes. Inside the chamber, Zira gestured to a hovering seat. Eli sat, and she remained standing for a moment, gathering her thoughts. "Eli," she began, her voice quieter now. "There is something unusual about you, something familiar. Do you recall any event where you might have assisted me many years ago?" Eli looked puzzled. "I am afraid my memory is not perfect, Queen Zira. I have traveled many worlds, met countless beings. I may have helped someone in the past, but I cannot recall exactly what you mean." He smiled gently. "Perhaps you can tell me." Zira hesitated. She had only fragments of memory. The collapse of a crystal spire, a sudden fall, and a human reaching out, quick and decisive, lifting her to safety before the structure shattered. The details of the human's face were hazy, yet some part of her mind insisted it had been him. "I was trapped under a collapsing crystal spire," she said slowly. "I remember someone saving me. A human, brave and clever. Could it have been you?" Eli leaned back, his fingers steepled. "It is possible," he admitted. "I have been told humans can be surprising. But I do not remember the incident clearly. At the time, I might have thought it was just another day." Zira's violet eyes widened. She froze again, this time with disbelief and awe. The human who had saved her, whom she had long remembered as a legend of her youth, had acted without seeking praise. That was the essence of humanity, selfless, creative, and unexpectedly courageous. She felt a mix of admiration, gratitude, and wonder. They spoke for hours. Eli told her about his travels through the galaxy, sharing small human inventions, simple ideas that had solved complex problems, and stories of human creativity. Zira listened intently, amazed at how a species so physically delicate could possess such determination and cleverness. "What is it about humans?" Zira asked quietly, "that allows you to do things my people would never attempt?" Eli smiled, leaning forward. "I think it is because we take risks not for glory, but because we care. We see what must be done and we try. Sometimes we fail, sometimes we succeed, and we learn." Zira nodded slowly. The thought resonated deeply. In her empire, failure was often punished and caution was valued above all else. But humans, this human had saved her life, perhaps even changed the course of history. without hesitation or expectation. As the sun set over the crystalline horizon, casting long, shimmering shadows across the palace, Zyra finally allowed herself to relax. She realized that her initial freezing, her disbelief, was not only about recognition, it was about understanding. Humans were more remarkable than she had ever imagined. Eli, in his quiet, gentle way, had reminded her of that. "You are extraordinary, Eli," Zyra said softly. "Not just for what you did for me, but for who you are. I did not understand humans before. Perhaps I was wrong to doubt your kind." Eli shook his head, still smiling. "No, Queen Zyra, humans are human. We are not perfect, but we try. That is all we can do." Zyra considered his words. She thought of the countless advisors and generals she had relied upon over the years. Intelligent, capable, yet too rigid to see beyond their own systems. Eli had acted with simplicity and brilliance at the same time, and he had done it without thought of reward. For the first time in years, Zyra felt a strange mix of relief and excitement. A new era of understanding could begin, not through treaties or formal alliances, but through recognition of shared courage and ingenuity. The chamber grew quiet. Save for the hum of the energy grids that powered the palace, Zyra gazed at Eli, her mind racing with questions, curiosity, and admiration. "So," she finally said, "if you truly are the one who saved me all those years ago, then we have much to discuss. There is much that my people can learn from yours, and perhaps much that we can teach in return." Eli nodded, his calm demeanor unchanged. "I would be honored, Queen Zyra. Let us see what we can accomplish together." The human and the alien queen sat in silence for a moment, watching the three suns set behind the crystalline spires. Zyra's mind wandered to memories of the past and the possibilities of the future. One simple act of kindness decades ago had led them here, and now she realized the galaxy might never be the same again. Zyra's heart, which had frozen with disbelief at first sight, now throbbed with awe. She had met heroes before, but none like this human. Eli was not only her savior, he was a reminder of the potential, the courage and the brilliance that humanity carried, often unseen across the stars. For the first time in years, Zyra allowed herself to feel excitement, not for conquest or power, but for discovery, for connection, and for the unspoken promise of what humans and aliens could achieve together. And with that thought, she rose from her seat and gestured toward the observation window. "Come," she said. "Let me show you my world. Perhaps in seeing it, you will understand why your presence here matters more than you realize." Eli stood and followed her, smiling quietly. The sun's light glinted off the crystal towers, casting a path of shimmering colors that seemed to welcome him. And in that moment, both human and queen knew that the story of their reunion was only beginning. The palace of Lunara Prime was quiet now, bathed in the soft glow of the three moons that had begun to rise over the horizon. Crystal spires reflected their silver light, making the entire city shimmer as though the world itself were alive. Queen Zyra stood at the observation window, her violet eyes fixed on the horizon, but her mind was elsewhere, lost in a foggy memory she could not fully grasp. Eli had moved quietly behind her, watching the queen with his calm, familiar smile. He seemed comfortable in this alien palace, though it was clear he was still learning its ways. Zyra finally spoke, breaking the silence. "There is something I must show you," she said. Her voice trembled slightly, though she tried to hide it. "Something from long ago. Something I have never shared with anyone." Eli raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "I am honored, Queen Zyra, but what is it?" She gestured to a large device in the center of the chamber, a memory projection sphere. The sphere hovered above the floor, pulsing softly with energy. "This device can replay memories, not just mine, but those of anyone present during the event. It is not commonly used, but in this case I think it is necessary." Eli nodded. "If it can help you remember, I am willing." Zyra touched the sphere and a holographic display emerged. Light swirled within it, forming shapes and colors that slowly solidified into scenes from the past. Zyra's hands trembled slightly as the first image appeared. Her younger self, barely 19 cycles old, wandering across a crystal canyon on a diplomatic mission. The memory was vivid. A crystal spire, unstable and tall, had begun to shake violently under some strange energy storm. Younger Zyra had slipped on a ridge, her balance lost. The crystal spire groaned, threatening to collapse. Panic had filled her heart, and for a moment she had thought she would fall and be crushed, and then a hand had reached for her. A human hand, steady and strong. The figure had been fast, moving with precision and thoughtfulness. With careful strength, he had lifted her just as the spire shattered, sending shards of crystal scattering like fireworks. She had been safe, though the danger had been immense. The next morning, Queen Zira and Eli stood on the balcony of her palace, watching the three suns rise over the crystalline horizon. Light bounced off the spires, creating patterns that looked like flowing rivers of color. The air was cool, and a soft breeze carried the scent of exotic flowers. Zira's mind was full of thoughts, but one idea stood out. She wanted to see Eli in action again, to understand more fully the strength of a human mind. Eli, she began, there is a matter that requires attention. A planet near our sector, Valora, is experiencing unusual energy storms. If left unchecked, they could disrupt the settlements there. I would like you to accompany me and observe how we handle this. Eli raised an eyebrow. Energy storms? That sounds dangerous, but I am ready to help however I can. Zira smiled faintly. I do not doubt it. But remember, this mission is not just about danger, it is about understanding. I want to see how humans solve problems in ways my people might not consider. Their ship, sleek and silver, lifted from the palace grounds. The engines hummed softly as they glided through the sky, leaving trails of light behind them. Zira watched Eli closely as he studied the control panels. He did not simply press buttons. He observed patterns, considered possibilities, and occasionally suggested minor adjustments that improved efficiency. Zira's advisors, seated behind her, whispered among themselves. Most had doubts about humans, especially in critical missions, but Zira only observed silently, intrigued by Eli's calm and thoughtful manner. After several hours, the ship approached Valora. From orbit, the planet looked beautiful but fragile. Storms of bright energy swirled in the upper atmosphere, creating arcs of light that crackled across the sky. Settlements were visible, floating on platforms above the planet's surface. Zira frowned, noting that even her most advanced sensors could not fully predict the storm's behavior. Landing carefully on a neutral platform, Zira and Eli stepped out. Alien leaders greeted them with cautious curiosity. Valora's inhabitants were intelligent and capable, but they had struggled to control the unpredictable storms. Zira spoke first. The storms here are unusual. My people have studied them for decades, yet their patterns remain unpredictable. We hope to work with your scientists to find a solution. Eli nodded, scanning the energy readings with a portable device he had brought. May I? He asked, holding out his hands toward a holographic display of the storm patterns. The alien leaders hesitated but stepped aside. Eli's mind worked quickly. He noticed small patterns in the storms, repetitions that others had overlooked. He suggested simple adjustments to energy dampeners and satellite positions, using human logic rather than brute force. Slowly, the storms began to stabilize. The arcs of energy flickered less and settlements experienced minimal disruption. Zira watched in amazement. Your methods, they are simple, yet effective. My advisors never considered such an approach. Eli smiled. Sometimes the simplest solution is the best. Complexity can blind even the most advanced minds. Throughout the day, Eli worked alongside Zira, explaining his reasoning and making suggestions that seemed obvious in hindsight. Zira's admiration grew. Humans were not powerful in the traditional sense, but their minds were adaptable, creative, and capable of thinking in ways aliens could not. During a brief break, they walked together across the platform. The wind carried the electric tang of energy storms, and the sky glowed with shifting colors. Zira glanced at Eli, her expression softening. You know, she said, I never realized how much humans rely on thinking and observation rather than force. Your species has patience and creativity in ways my empire often lacks. Eli chuckled softly. We have to. Humans are not the strongest or fastest. Our strength is in our minds and our hearts. We see what others overlook because we must. We learn from mistakes, and sometimes that is enough. Zira nodded, feeling a new respect for this human beside her. She had long believed that strength came from power, speed, or advanced technology. Eli's calm intelligence and thoughtful problem-solving challenged that belief. As the day turned to evening, the energy storms finally stabilized. Settlements were secure and the alien leaders expressed their gratitude. Zira addressed them, her voice carrying authority and warmth. This human, Eli, has shown us that courage and creativity are not limited to strength. Even those who seem fragile can accomplish great things. Let his example remind us that intelligence, empathy, and perseverance are as valuable as power. The crowd murmured, some in surprise, others in admiration. Zyra's advisors looked at her with new understanding. The Queen's respect for humans was growing, and it was clear that Eli's presence had changed her perspective. Later, as they prepared to return to Lunara Prime, Zyra and Eli stood on the observation deck of the platform, watching the now stable storms ripple gently across the planet. "You did well today," Zyra said quietly. "Your idea saved countless lives here. I am beginning to understand why humans are so remarkable." Eli smiled faintly. "I did what any human would do. We act when needed. We try to solve problems. That is all?" Zyra shook her head. "No, what you did was extraordinary. Your calm, your insight, your patience. It is a reminder that strength is not always about power or force. It is about mind and heart." For a long moment they stood in silence, watching the glowing storms below. Zyra's thoughts drifted back to the memory of when Eli had saved her years ago. She realized that this human's courage had not changed. It had only grown, shaped by experience and wisdom. "You have changed the way I think about my empire, Eli," she said softly. "I want my people to see what you have shown me today. Perhaps then, they will value thoughtfulness and creativity as much as strength and technology." Eli looked at her with calm understanding. "If humans can teach you that, then perhaps we can learn from each other in many ways. Strength comes in different forms, Zyra. We only need to recognize it." Zyra smiled, a rare warmth in her expression. For the first time in many years she felt hope, not for conquest or control but for understanding and connection. The universe was vast, full of challenges and wonders, and she realized that humans, in their quiet and thoughtful way, could be trusted partners, capable of changing the course of events without fanfare or violence. As the ship lifted off from Valora, leaving the now stable storms behind, Zyra and Eli stood side by side on the observation deck. The stars stretched endlessly before them, and the galaxy seemed full of possibilities. "I want to learn more from you," Zyra said finally. "Not just about humans, but about how to think differently, to approach problems in new ways. You have shown me that even the smallest mind, guided by care and intelligence, can change the world." Eli nodded, his calm smile unwavering. "And I want to learn from you, Queen Zyra, from your people, from your perspective. Together perhaps we can accomplish things neither humans nor aliens could achieve alone." The crystalline spires of Lunara Prime gleamed in the distance as their ship raced homeward. Zyra's mind was alive with ideas, and her admiration for humans, quiet yet profound, had only deepened. One human had saved her years ago, and now, standing beside her, another, or perhaps the same human, had shown her the true value of thought, creativity, and courage. And as they traveled through the stars, the bond between Queen and human grew stronger, a connection built on respect, understanding, and the recognition that the galaxy was far richer because humans existed, and because their minds, hearts, and actions mattered more than anyone had realized. The journey back to Lunara Prime was quiet, filled with contemplation and unspoken trust. Both knew that their mission was only the beginning. The universe was vast, full of mysteries, challenges, and possibilities, and together, human and Queen would explore it, learning, growing, and proving that courage and intelligence were not limited by species or strength. In that moment, as the stars streaked past the ship's windows, Queen Zyra realized something she had never understood before. Humans were not fragile. They were remarkable, and Eli, in his quiet, thoughtful way, had reminded her of that truth once more. The ship carrying Queen Zyra and Eli glided smoothly back to Lunara Prime. Stars shimmered outside the window like tiny sparks of possibility. Zyra stood at the observation deck, her violet eyes fixed on the galaxy ahead. The recent mission to Valora had changed her perspective. Eli had shown her that human thinking, simple, flexible, and thoughtful, could achieve what her empire's advanced methods could not. But Zyra knew that not everyone would share her admiration. Back in her court, powerful alien leaders and advisors would question her trust in a human. They would doubt his abilities, see him as fragile or insignificant. Zyra sighed softly. This next step would be more difficult. Eli joined her at the window. "You look thoughtful," he said gently. "I am. Zira admitted. You helped stabilize Valora's storms. You showed me things my own advisors could not. But my people, they may not understand. They will question my decision to work with you. Eli smiled faintly. Let them. The only way they'll understand is if we show them. Not by words alone, but by actions and results. Zira tilted her head, intrigued by his calm confidence. You sound certain? How can you be so sure? Because, Eli replied softly, I've seen it before. Humans earn trust by showing what they can do. We can't force anyone to believe. We simply do the work quietly until even the doubt the truth. The palace on Lunara Prime was alive with anticipation. In a few hours, Queen Zira would host the great gathering she had promised. A meeting of leaders from across the sector. It would be the first time humans were openly discussed as allies rather than curiosities. Yet despite the excitement, Zira felt a quiet unease in her chest. For days now, she had been trying to remember something from long ago. A memory just beyond reach, something about a rescue, a face she had seen once before. Every time she looked at Eli, that memory stirred, like a whisper she could not quite catch. That morning, Zira walked through the palace archives, a vast hall of crystal pillars and shimmering data streams. She had ordered her historians to gather records of her early life, especially from the time of the great accident on Theralis Station, decades ago. Theralis Station had been a dark chapter of her life. When she was still a young princess before she became queen, an experimental energy core on the station malfunctioned, causing a massive explosion. Zira had been trapped in a collapsing wing of the station, certain she would die. She remembered chaos, alarms, cold air rushing out into space, and then nothing. She had been found later, unconscious but alive, carried to safety by unknown hands. Her advisors always told her the rescuers were her own royal guards, but somehow that answer had never satisfied her. Now, as she prepared for the gathering with Eli, the memory pressed harder, asking for answers. Zira stood before a flickering hollow display showing old security footage from the station. The images were grainy, but she could make out the shapes of panicked aliens running, the flicker of sparks, the collapse of corridors. She fast-forwarded until she found herself. A much younger Zira, pinned under debris, her suit torn, eyes wide with terror. And then she saw it. A figure appearing through the smoke wearing a simple survival suit. Not an alien guard. A human. Her breath caught. The figure knelt, lifted the debris and pulled her out with surprising strength. His visor briefly reflected light, revealing a face, blurred but unmistakably human. He carried her toward an escape pod as the station fell apart. Zira paused the footage, staring at the image. Her hands trembled. "It was you," she whispered. It was you all along. She ran a search on the archival files. The rescuer's name had been logged as unidentified civilian. The escape pod had launched and drifted for days before a patrol found her. The rescuer had disappeared, assumed lost. But now, seeing the footage, Zira knew that rescuer was standing in her palace right now. She closed her eyes and breathed deeply. All this time, she had wondered why Eli's presence felt so familiar. Now she knew. Meanwhile, Eli was in the central courtyard, adjusting the human-made projector he would use during the gathering. He looked calm, but inside he felt a quiet tension. This gathering was more than a presentation. It was a chance to prove that humanity could be a true partner to Zira's empire. He did not notice Zira approach until her shadow fell across his work. When he looked up, she was standing there, her expression unreadable. "Eli," she said softly. He smiled. "Good morning, Your Majesty. I was just making sure everything's ready for the meeting." She tilted her head, studying him. "We need to talk. In private." Eli sensed the seriousness in her voice. He set the projector aside and followed her into one of the palace's quiet gardens. Crystal flowers lined the paths, glowing faintly under the morning light. They stopped beside a fountain where liquid light flowed like a living stream. Zira turned to him, her eyes shining. "I saw the footage," she said. Eli blinked. "Footage?" "From Theralis Station," she whispered. The explosion. The collapse. The rescue. He froze. For a moment he said nothing. Then he lowered his eyes, his calm mask slipping. "You remember." Zira stepped closer. "It was you, wasn't it? You were the one who saved me." Eli sighed softly. "I didn't want you to know like this, but yes. I was stationed there at the time as part of a small human research team. When the core malfunctioned, everything went out of control. I saw you trapped. I couldn't just leave you. Zira's voice trembled, though she tried to steady it. All these years, I thought it was my guards. They told me it was. They said no human could have reached me in time. I'm sorry, Eli said gently. I didn't mean for it to be a secret. After I got you into the escape pod, I stayed behind to help others. By the time I tried to escape, the section had collapsed. I was injured and drifted for days before my team found me. When I recovered, I didn't think you would even remember my face. And by then you were queen. You were far away from anything human. Zira stared at him, her emotions a mix of gratitude, shock, and something deeper. Why didn't you tell me? Eli looked at the glowing water. Because it wasn't about credit. It was about doing the right thing. You were a life in danger. That's all I saw. And later when I met you again as Queen Zira, I didn't want you to feel obligated. I wanted you to judge me for what I could do now, not for something I did long ago. For a long moment, silence hung between them. The garden hummed softly, light shifting across the crystal leaves. Finally, Zira spoke. All this time I have wondered why I felt safe with you, why your presence calmed me. Now I understand. She reached out, her long fingers brushing his hand. You gave me my life, and now you are giving my people a new way to see the galaxy. How can I ever repay that? Eli shook his head. You don't have to. Seeing you lead your people towards something better, that's enough. Zira's eyes glimmered. But it is not enough for me to stay silent. When the gathering begins, I will tell them the truth. I will tell them a human saved me, that it is not weakness to learn from others, that our future depends on trust. Eli hesitated. Are you sure? It could change how they see you. Good, she said firmly. It should. That evening, the grand hall filled with leaders from dozens of worlds. They sat in tiered seats of crystal, their robes shimmering, their voices murmuring. In the center, a circular platform awaited Zira and Eli. When Zira entered, the hall fell silent. Her presence was regal yet calm. Eli followed at her side, holding the projector. She began the gathering with a speech. Leaders of the sector, she said, her voice steady, we are at a turning point. Our empire has long believed we are unmatched. But a human has shown me otherwise. She paused, letting her words sink in. Years ago, when I was still a princess, an accident on Theralis Station nearly claimed my life. I was rescued not by my guards, not by advanced machines, but by a human. That human stands beside me today. A ripple of shock moved through the crowd. Eli stood quietly, letting the moment belong to her. Zira continued. He saved me without hope of reward. And now he has saved our colonies from storms. His thinking, his perspective, his humility. These are strengths we need. This is why I ask you to see humanity not as lesser, but as partners. Eli activated the projector, showing the Valora stabilization project again, but this time interlaced with images of Theralis Station and the rescue footage. The crowd watched, murmuring, their skepticism melting into fascination. Serene, one of the skeptical counselors from before, rose to speak. If this is true, then we have underestimated humans indeed. Perhaps their strength is not in their technology, but in their spirit. Calith, once the most doubtful, bowed his head slightly. Your Majesty, if a human saved your life, then perhaps a human can help guide our future as well. Zira nodded, feeling a swell of hope. This was more than a meeting. It was the beginning of something new. Later, after the gathering ended and the leaders began their private discussions, Zira and Eli walked out onto the balcony once more. The stars were brighter tonight, or perhaps they simply felt that way. You changed everything today, Eli said softly. No, Zira replied. We did. Together. They stood side by side, the city below glowing like a living map of light. In her heart, Zira felt a new certainty. The moment she had frozen years ago on Theralis Station was no longer just a memory. It was a bond, a promise, a foundation for the future they were building now. And for the first time, Zira allowed herself to smile without reservation. The human who had once saved her had returned, not just as a rescuer, but as a partner in the great work ahead. The Great Hall of Lunara Prime had emptied hours ago. Leaders from dozens of planets had spoken, debated, and finally agreed to form a new council that would include human voices for the first time. The night air around the palace now felt lighter, almost electric, as though the city itself sensed change. Queen Zira stood at her balcony, looking down at the shimmering streets. Her people moved like streams of glowing silk between the crystal towers. She had spent her whole reign maintaining order, protecting her empire and showing strength. But tonight she had chosen a different kind of strength: honesty, humility, and connection. Eli stepped onto the balcony behind her. His suit was simple compared to the elaborate robes of the alien envoys, yet his calm presence made him stand out even more. "They've agreed," he said softly. "The council is forming. Representatives from Earth will be invited to speak. This is the first time in history your empire has shared power." Zira smiled faintly. "It is more than sharing power. It is sharing trust." They stood together, listening to the city. Far below, citizens had gathered in small groups, speaking about the day's announcements. Hollow screens replayed Zira's speech about the Theralus Station rescue, her admission that a human had saved her life. To Zira Rize,